the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is our third day of Truth Team 360. We have a lot to talk about today, the election results, and of course we'll be talking in just a few minutes, as I mentioned yesterday, with Robert Knight, and then later with Dr. Al Mohler. But as we always talk about here on Truth Team 360, we're all about truth and teaching truth, but also we want you to join the team. And for as little as $1 a day, $360 a year, or $30 a month, however you want to look at it, you can be part of that Truth Team 360. In studio with me, as he's been all week, Brad Fisk.
Hey, good afternoon, and good to be here. It's Truth Team 360 week. It's a special opportunity. It's extra interaction that we have. Normally, we don't have as much with you, but we are asking you to interact with us financially this week. And let me give you the phone number right out of the gate here, 1-800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And as you just mentioned a moment ago, we have some different giving levels. The base level, we're really looking for you to join the Truth Team. This is a real team.
Yeah.
It's about standing for truth with a capital T. And for $360 spread out over a whole year, any way you want to do it, you can be a part of that team. And we've got a very special thank you gift, two of them actually, to choose from.
We do. We have a tote bag and a sports bag. Mm-hmm. And we always encourage you, if you'd like to see those, to go to the website, pointofview.net. From time to time, we hold them up here in the studio if you happen to be watching on computer. But again, you can find out more if you talk to the people.
That's right.
Or else if you can do this online. And I know many of you just like to simply go to pointofview.net, click on that button that says join our team, and for as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, that is the case. But also, one of the things, Brad, we've pointed out is that if you calculate what it costs to produce these programs, if you wanted to sponsor a minute a month,
how creative that is.
$65 a month. And again, you can select one of those bags.
Oh, you get both of them if you want.
Yes, you certainly could.
That's right.
And we're just really generous here, because if you think you could use them, we would like to put them in your hands.
Now, Kerby, these are Land's End products. These are high end. This beautiful canvas tote bag and this sports bag, which got 18 pockets on it, which you need. And I'm serious. It really is. Those are wonderful gifts.
Yeah, tote bag, you can put your books in it, and we're always giving away books or talking about books and things like that. Sports bag, if you go to a fitness center. And then one last one at the century level. That's $100 a month,
or
and
more.
I know some of you can certainly give $100 or more a month. That's $1,200 a year. We have this executive travel bag as well as those others. But for a gift of any size, you are holding in your hand right now the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That's
and it fits in your shirt pocket.
Yes, it does. And it's something you should take with you, especially if you get talking with somebody that doesn't know the Constitution, like a member of Congress. No, I'm just kidding there. But this is something that you will find very helpful as well. So
definitely.
We certainly recognize you don't give to get, but these are ways of welcoming you to the team. We have a number of team members, but Brad, we certainly need to talk about how we've been doing. We're in middle of the week.
And it's been interesting. We've had some challenges, and these some of our doing, some not of our doing, and so it's been a very interesting week thus far. We are running a little behind. We did have a pretty big glitch yesterday in our first hour with our broadcast system. And it's all fixed. Everything's rolling. We're good today. So I'm asking you to prayerfully consider, and we are going to spend the entire 2 hours talking about reasons to give. And we're going to be going that way in just a moment in this first segment.
Just before we do so, though, we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking with the president of Point of View, Warren Kelly. And Warren, we had a glitch yesterday, but I think everything's back to normal.
Yes, we have it back on track today. We have backups to our backups, but for some reason things just fell apart yesterday.
And of all the times for that to take place.
It happens.
Brad, again, we need to find out kind of how we're doing, right?
That's right. We are moving along. We have a pledge line for you to call at 1-800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. We are behind a little bit in the whole week as we look at it, and that's not a good reason to give necessarily because we're behind. The reason we're asking you to join the Truth Team is because we cannot do this alone. Period. We just cannot. We'd be off the air in a heartbeat if our listeners and our givers and our donors disappeared. We'd be gone.
Yeah.
And so we're not making this up. There's no desperation here. There's no begging at all. We're simply giving you an opportunity because, Kerby, giving is an act of worship.
Yes.
Just like a sermon or prayers or Bible reading, all of that is part of God's kingdom. Giving is no different.
Yes.
And so we're asking you to give as we have this week-long worship service right here in the Point of View studios.
I might just mention, too, that one of the things we talk about is a very compelling reason to give is that we cover things that no one else does. And in just a few minutes, we're going to first talk with Robert Knight. We're going to talk about what happened in Houston, and he's got some insight that you will never hear on National Public Radio. You'll never hear that on mainstream media. And then when we get to Al Mohler has a new book out, and I think so highly of this book. Not only have I done a commentary on it, I'm even going to do some of this in my Sunday school class. And again, these are things you have never heard.
That's right.
But you will only hear them here on Point of View.
That's a specialty of ours. Yeah. And I'm pretty excited about something that we've been talking about off air here in the last couple of days. And that's one of the reasons we brought Warren in, because Warren, I get very excited when I think about the possibility of expanding and enlarging the ministry of Point of View just beyond where we are now on close to 300 stations. Talk to us a little bit about that idea.
We do have some opportunities to expand the reach of the ministry, but it's not just about having more stations or more listeners. This is a means to an end. As we hear from our listeners across the country, the common theme over and over is what are we going to do? Where is our nation headed? I'm worried about the future that we're leaving for our grandchildren and children. Point of View has been effective for over 40 years at teaching people to apply biblical truth to their lives and then engaging the culture with that. And this is a way that we can change the culture. Kerby, I've heard you say it before, that the way you win a culture war is you change hearts and minds, and you do that by changing them one at a time. And that's what Point of View does well. And I think that we have an opportunity to expand that and hit even more. A lot of the people that listen to Point of View, they don't agree with Point of View. We have a lot of people that call in and we hear from them, but we're changing their hearts. And some of you have listened to Point of View, and you know how Point of View has impacted your life, the ways that you have gotten engaged in the culture. And when you multiply that times the 1.5 million people that we're reaching right now, and the opportunity that we could expand that even more, we have a great opportunity to change the direction of our country for the better.
We do.
Let's just hear from Paul, because he believes that we should all support Point of View.
The necessity of keeping your program on the air. As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
Paul just talking about the importance of being involved. And Brad, let's talk about this for just a minute. As we go to this first break today, this would be a great time for some of our listeners who have been waiting until now to participate to give us a call.
It would. And again, the phone number is 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Just picture, if you will, the influence of Point of View expanding someday in places we've never been before. If you believe that this message is valid, we really do need you to stand with us right now. 800-347-5151. You can always go to pointofview.net, click on Join the Team, and you can sign up that way as well.
And again, let's encourage you to consider what you might be able to do. We're a megaphone, and you can help make that megaphone even larger and louder. Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk with Robert Knight. Warren Kelly's been with us, but Brad Fisk will stay here. 1-800-351-3.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
The editorial drumbeat against guns continues while the evidence mounts that gun deaths are decreasing. Two articles from last week illustrated these contradictory claims. The editorial board of the New York Times attacked what it called the fantasy that carrying a concealed weapon makes you safer. Meanwhile, Pew Research reported that the nation's overall gun death rate has declined 30% since 1993. The New York Times editorial cited statistics from the Violence Policy Center that since 2007, at least 763 people have been killed in 579 shootings that did not involve self-defense. There's some real problems with these statistics and the analysis. First, these numbers lump suicides with other deaths. Suicide should be considered separately because they have nothing to do with carrying a concealed weapon outside the home. John Lott has actually shown in his research that the suicide rate among concealed carry holders is lower than the general population. Second, the study had to cover a period of 7 years just to get the numbers high enough to sound scary. Remember that there are 12 million Americans that currently have concealed handgun permits. Given that large number of concealed carry holders, it is likely that a few of them over a 7-year period might have accidentally killed an innocent person while trying to bring down a perpetrator. The Pew Research report noted that an increased spotlight on guns does not reflect the overall gun violence trend in the country. Although most Americans think the number of gun crimes has risen, the U.S. gun homicide rate has actually stabilized somewhat in recent years. Actually, the nation's overall gun death rate has declined by 30%, and that percentage includes homicides, suicides, police shootings, and accidental shooting deaths. Sadly, many gun statistics used in editorials are being abused and misused. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores. Point of View, Truth Team 360, Alan West.
You know, when I think about the importance of Point of View Radio, it is so essential that we connect with the Christian conservative community on the issues and the topics of the day so that they can really get that information to educate and inform them to make better decisions. You know, I have two daughters, 22 and 18, and one of the things that concerns me is the impact that the culture will have upon them. And if we don't stand up as evangelical Christians, as Christian conservatives, and start to show the other points of view and start to talk about these issues that are critical out there for the building of character, the strengthening of the soul and the spirit against some of the very negative impacts of culture, then we will lose our young people. We will lose future generations. The important thing about Point of View ministry is that it arms you. It equips you to go out and do exactly as God commanded Joshua to do. To be strong and of good courage, for the Lord thy God shall never leave you nor forsake you.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Colonel Alan West also served in Congress and a good friend, now head of the National Center for Policy Analysis. Brad Fisk with me, and we're going to be talking with Robert Knight in just a minute. But let's again remind people why we are actually doing what we're doing this week. Truth Team 360.
That's right. This is a opportunity for us to partner with you and you with us. You get to hear the program all throughout the year, and just a couple times a year we come to you saying, you know what? It costs money to do what we do. And we are a nonprofit 501c3. We are listener-supported Christian programming and on Christian radio stations, and we're so grateful for that. And we don't pay for airtime. We partner with our radio stations and provide this as a service to them and their audience. And the only way this works, Kerby, is for our friends to call and to pledge their support. Be as generous as you can when you call. That $1 a day level is such an easy intro level.
Right.
It really is. Listen, don't let that scare you. Take that on by faith and say, you know what, I think I can do that. 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. And you can also go to the website to give at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Let me encourage you, even as you're listening to the interview here, as we talk about families and the gay agenda, you can just simply be listening and still go on the website if you happen to have a computer and go and hit that join our team. We are going to be talking now with Robert Knight, Senior Fellow with the American Civil Rights Union, an individual that also writes a weekly column for Washington Times. We've posted a number of those in the past. He has actually been an editor and writer for the Los Angeles Times and has a master's degree from American University. Has worked with Concerned Women for America, Family Research Council, Heritage Foundation, Coral Ridge, to mention just a few.
What hasn't he done?
Yeah, he has been everywhere, and he's been our eyes and ears there in Washington, D.C. Robert Knight, always great to have you on the program.
Well, what I haven't done is work for People for the American Way.
Or the ACLU.
Good answer.
Not to be confused
the ACLU,
with,
right.
not to be confused with the American Civil Rights Union. Of course, you know where I'm going. There was a ordinance and a proposition in Houston, and the voters overwhelmingly rejected the city's Proposition 1, which would have allowed any man or woman to use any bathroom based upon chosen gender identity and a number of other issues. You've been following this for some time. Robert, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that people were educated as to the threat laws like these pose to basic liberties. When they went after the pastor's sermons, when they subpoenaed their emails, their sermons, their notes, anything having to do with that particular issue, the people woke up and said, wait a second, we live in America. You're going after pastors and churches because they voiced an opinion on a public issue? Who do you think you are? Well, what the mayor apparently thought she was a dictator. And that's really the operating premise of the whole leftist agenda, that they will use force if they can. They'll go through democratic means if they can, but they will resort to force ultimately if they don't get their way. And people are reacting to it.
You know, this has been portrayed primarily as a non-discrimination issue, and Proposition 1, of course, went down to a resounding defeat. The supporters said, we're disappointed with today's outcome, but our work to secure non-discrimination protections for all hardworking Houstonians will continue. No one should have to live with the specter of discrimination hanging over them. The only people I see right now that are suffering under something that might be discrimination are florists and bakers and photographers and individuals that don't go along with the gay agenda. But am I missing something?
No, you're not. The whole look, I've said this before, and I've said it on this program, Kerby, that if the gay rights people triumph and everything they want, it'll be the criminalization of Christianity in the United States. That's because they redefine religious belief, traditional moral values derived from the Bible, as a form of bigotry actionable under the law. You can't discriminate on the basis of race and ethnicity and characteristics like that. We agreed as a nation that there had to be some redress. But when you bring up behaviors, that's totally different. That involves morality. It involves moral choices. And when you say you can no longer have your moral views on this, now you're talking about using the government to impose tyranny instead of liberty.
You know, we have Brad Fisk with us as well. And Brad, you're a father, a grandfather.
Yes.
Even we got talking about this yesterday. I mean, I think you used the word insanity when you talked about some of these ideas.
You know, when I talked about the Houston thing, and it's going on in California, and I know how these things work. I'm old enough to see how this cancer can spread through the entire country. And so I was very encouraged about the vote. But at the same time, I was reading some of the press this morning, and the supporters of this whole thing have actually said, we're not going away. We're coming back again and again. Did you? I'm wondering if you saw some of that reaction.
Oh, yeah. They never give up. And unfortunately, our folks are occupied with raising families, operating businesses, minding their own business. And we tend to win a battle and then walk away while the institutional left just keeps hammering away and trying to wear people down. The good news is people seem to have woken up because the left has overreached. Their real agenda is on display now, as they picked on Barronelle Stutzman, the florist in Washington State, for not providing flowers for a same-sex ceremony. They picked on Sweet Cakes by Melissa in Oregon for not baking a wedding cake for a lesbian couple. And they went after them with using the power of government to try to enforce their point of view. This has not been lost on people. And I think it was actually a gift in Houston when the mayor overreached and went after the pastors. That woke up a lot of people who had been lulled into believing that this is just an extension of the civil rights movement. What can it hurt, being tolerant toward all? Well, it's really not about tolerance. It's about harnessing government power to destroy Christianity in the public square. It's really that bad.
Let me, if I can, for just a minute before we take our first break here, talk about the fact we have some victories. We can talk about Houston. I might even mention, and we'll get into this later when we talk about Kentucky, the new governor in Kentucky probably is going to be much more sympathetic to Kim Davis. But let's take another one. Blaine Adamson was an owner of a screen printing company, and a homosexual wanted him to print rainbow T-shirts. And yet it turns out that the court said, wait a minute, this doesn't work. You don't lose your First Amendment rights. You're an artist. I mean, can you imagine somebody coming into an artist and say, I want you to draw this picture? Well, wait a minute, I've got some artistic creativity. And what I found, Robert, is that, we do have the gay bullies, but there are a lot of other homosexuals out there that are saying this isn't right. And there were 2 or 3 different other T-shirt companies who had homosexuals in there and saying, this is not right. You should not do this. I may not agree with you, but let's face it, we would never print a T-shirt for Westboro Baptist Church. And we would, and so they really got into their shoes. There were some people that were homosexuals came to the defense. Remember that pizza place in Indiana?
Yes.
So I see that some of this might be changing, Robert, that even people that might not agree with us philosophically, theologically, even socially, are saying gay bullies have gone a little too far this time.
Yeah, you have speakers like Camille Paglia, who's a lesbian author and speaker, and she has written about the totalitarian nature of the gay rights movement and how it really is all about power. It's not about tolerance. And that she was embarrassed, frankly, by the overreach committed by a lot of these guys, not just in gay pride parades where they're on all manner of undress and everything else, but the quick response to any disappointment to resort to the courts to try to get government power to get on their side. She said it's going to boomerang on them. It's going to destroy some of the sympathy that they've garnered in recent years, and I think it has.
You guys, I have to jump in here because what you guys are talking about so fits, Robert, what we're trying to do with Truth Team 360. It's just a perfect fit of all of this misinformation going on. But at a point of view, I would like to ask you, what do you think?
Well, I think things like point of view are so important because the media are so biased that you must get alternative sources of information. Point of view is an excellent one. You guys have very high standards, and you get out information that you just cannot find on the networks, in major newspapers. And I say that having spent years in journalism, in so-called mainstream journalism. And I will tell you, I saw the reporters and editors evolve from being mere liberals in the newsroom to outright radical activists intent on suppressing views they didn't like and promoting views they did.
Please give us a call, 1-800-347-5151. We'll be back with Robert Knight right after this.
The week is quickly passing us by. If you have called to join our team, please know how grateful we are for the encouragement and the support. Thank you for stepping up and making this work possible. If you have not called, if you have not given, please consider again what this ministry means to you and in a very real sense to the nation. As Gary Bauer said Tuesday,
you guys do just an incredible job of providing people information and calls to action that, quite frankly, they don't get many other places. Because without point of view and just a few other similar types of outlets, you will be true and accurate and consistent with your biblical-based values.
And remember, every dollar you give, whether as a one-time gift or monthly, every dollar is being doubled thanks to our match fund. Don't delay any longer. Call 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. 1-800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Halfway through Truth Team 360.
That's
and
right.
Certainly we are challenging you to join with us. And again, we had some phone calls during the break, but this would be a great time for you to give us a call. 800-347-5151. We do need to hear from you. We are listener supported, and you are the broadcast to you every single day.
That's right. And we invite you to join the team, the Truth Team 360. It's $1 a day. Come on, you guys. It is $1 a day
That's
to
simple.
set aside for the ministry
Very
of
easy.
Point of View. And the investment of how far that the Lord's going to take and stretch that gift around the world with your help. The phone number, 1-800-347-5151. It's a 2 to 3 minute call. You don't have to have the funds in hand right now. This is a pledge for the future. Maybe it's your tax return coming up in a few months, possibly a refund or something like that. 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And you can give online at pointofview.net.
Robert Knight with us for a few more minutes. And Robert, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is this World Congress of Families. It was in Salt Lake City. And again, your most recent article here, Restoring the Natural Family. Family's not dead despite the elite's fondest hopes. I think the family will always exist, even if there are always attacks on the family. But before we get into the World Congress and what actually took place there, I believe that our friends, and I put this in quote, at the Southern Poverty Law Center had a problem with that, didn't they?
Well, yeah, they denounced the Congress as a festival of hate. They said people were bigots. Anybody supporting traditional biblical values was obviously operating from hatred. But they look foolish. If you had attended this thing, you wouldn't have seen any hate whatsoever. You'd see a lot of love. You'd see a lot of commitment to moms and dads and kids, and a lot of good news.
Yes.
I think the best news I heard was from Alan Carlson of the Howard Center.
Yes.
Dr. Carlson has studied families for decades, and he said, we may be on the verge of a renaissance of the American family. In the United States, there have been cyclical periods, where the family was devalued, marriage wasn't valued, people didn't bother getting married, they had children out of wedlock. It hasn't been just one continual support for marriage and then it all blowing apart in the 1960s. He said in 1814, things were not so good. He said, but here's the good news. About 50 years of that is all people can stand. And the current anti-family atmosphere, so to speak, fomented by the sexual revolution, comes up in about 2020. He said it got going in 1970 after the 60s deinstitutionalization of values kicked in. So we could, as bad as things look sometimes when you look at what's on TV and everything else, a lot of the children of divorce are saying, I'm going to be a good parent, I'm going to spare my children what I went through. Some people are saying the sexual revolution has been a disaster for everybody, men, women, and children. Truth and facts are really useful, and more and more of them are coming out. So hang tight, folks. Don't give up. Marriage is not going to go away. God created it, and nobody can destroy it fully.
I was also thinking demographics work in our favor. The younger you are, the more likely you are to be pro-life. Because think about this, you're more likely to be aborted in a pro-choice home than a pro-life home. And then pro-life people have a lot of children. I mean, Brad's kind of just repopulating just with his own family. I mean,
9 kids.
Yeah, 9 kids, But I mean, the point I'm making is that in some respects, these kids are growing up either in divorced homes and seeing the problem with it, or they're growing up in intact Christian homes and they're saying, I want to have more of those. And so in some respects, we are actually leading the charge both philosophically, theologically, but also demographically, aren't we?
Yeah, that's true. A lot of liberals don't have kids. Or they have one, maybe two, but they don't have the big families by and large because that's not their worldview. The worldview for most liberals is that the state ought to take care of most things so I can go about my business and do whatever it is I want. In fact, the whole sexual revolution was fueled by the concept that somebody else owes me a living. Somebody else needs to take care of my unwanted child or any needs I have. And if I come down with a sexually transmitted illness, well, that's the government's problem, and the taxpayers should pay for my care. I mean, it's just one thing I spoke about at the World Congress of Families is that the sexual revolution didn't start in the 60s. It started back at the time of the French Revolution, when the left really rose up, and
Rousseau,
their first
Voltaire,
revolution was a sexual one.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah, Marx and Engels were both prolific philanderers, and Engels wrote an essay against the family, said children ought to be communally raised, men and women ought to be sexually free and have whatever partner they want. And they knew that if they destroyed the family, that would help destroy the church, their main enemy, and that would pave the way for individuals to have to turn to the state for sustenance. So the whole agenda of the left from the beginning has been anti-family, anti-church, anti-sexual morality, and that continues to this day. Over on the left, they want unlimited abortion, even partial birth abortion. They have tried to redefine marriage entirely. They destroy children's innocence with graphic sex education as early as possible. Remember Thomas Sowell, the great writer from Hoover Institution, once said, "It doesn't take decades to teach children about sex. You can do that in 5 minutes. What takes years is to destroy their innocence and wear them down to the point where they feel they're somehow missing something if they don't go and commit reckless acts."
Yes, very good. One other question I wanted to ask, and that it comes out of that World Congress as well, is how do we respond? Second hour, we're going to be talking with Al Mohler about his book, We Cannot Be Silent. But you also said that Rafael Cruz, and he is the father of Ted Cruz, who's pledging civil disobedience over the Supreme Court's June ruling declaring a new right to same-sex marriage. It seems to me that Christians are really going to have to stand strong, and that's one of the things we talk about here at Point of View.
Yeah, he was terrific. That was one of my favorite speeches, and he got the response he should have, which was he was defiant. He said, look, the Lord created marriage as the union of a man and a woman. It's been like that for thousands of years. Just because 5 justices in black robes suddenly decided to create an entirely new model and then tell us that we all have to celebrate it and go by that model doesn't make it right, doesn't give them the authority to do that. Kim Davis, the Rowan County clerk in Kentucky who refused to sign marriage licenses for same-sex couples, has been accused of not following the law. But she's the one who's actually following the law. Yeah. People of Kentucky overwhelmingly voted for marriage in their laws. She saw nothing in the Supreme Court decision that says that Kentucky has to go along with the delusions of these 5 justices.
Yeah, hey, Robert,
the Supreme Court decision is not law. It's just a direction. It's an opinion.
Guys, I got some great news here. I'm going to interrupt really quick, Robert. Excuse me for doing that,
sure.
But a couple of friends really believe in what we're talking about because they just stepped up to the table. We now have a $5,000 match challenge on the table thanks to a couple of friends of the ministry. So there's some people that must be agreeing with us, and that's very exciting. So guys, between now and the end of our second hour, every dollar you give from this moment forward, it will be doubled up to $5,000. What do you think of that? Yes.
I think that's great.
Well, let's
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to get that news out.
But I think your good point is well taken. And Robert, I might just mention for just a minute that we do have a link to your website because some people might say, this goes all the way back to the French Revolution. Okay, I need to read that. You've got some books and articles and resources that people can find and learn a little bit more about where this whole sexual revolution came from.
Yeah, well, you could actually go on eBay or something and get my book, The Age of Consent.
There you go.
I wrote that several years ago,
Great
but it
book.
really gives a history of the left and where we are now. But the ACRU.org is the website for the American Civil Rights Union. One thing we've been doing almost exclusively recently is trying to make sure people don't commit vote fraud by making sure there are voter ID laws in place, that the voter rolls are cleaned up. In fact, we've sued successfully counties in Mississippi and in Texas to get consent decrees to clean up the voter rolls where more than 100% of the residents were registered to vote. which tells you something.
When you got 112% voter participation, as you did in one county, you know that either very patriotic or some
that's
dead
leftist
people
math.
are voting.
Yeah, that's liberal math right there.
Well, again,
Vote early and often, like in Chicago.
That's right. So it's theacru.org, but we have the link there on the website, and people can find out a little bit more. And Robert, we've got to go to a break, but I sure appreciate you joining with us today, and let's do it again soon.
Oh, thanks a lot, Kerby, and thanks to you too, Brad.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful.
$5,000 match challenge.
Yeah, isn't that exciting?
Between now and the end of the program. So let's get some response.
We got to burn up the phone lines.
Okay,
1-800-347-5151. We have 5 lines available right now for you. 800-347-5151. That means, Kerby, if you give a gift of $360 and join the Truth Team, it becomes $720.
Right.
That is the impact. Double impact is going to be on your gift. You give a $100 single gift, it becomes $200. You give that $100 a month we talked about and join the Century Club, it's doubled.
$2,400.
That's right.
This would be a good time to call since we have a match on the table. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151.
Let's go.
We'll be right back.
To the phones.
Point of View, Truth Team 360, Tony Perkins.
Well, as you know, there are a lot of places you can get information, but there's only a few places that you can get the right information. And I think Point of View brings to the Christian community the insight necessary to understand the issues of our day. And I'd hate to think what our country would look like if we did not have programs like Point of View and what Point of View has been doing for decades. So I, for one, am grateful that we have Point of View out there.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Tony Perkins, Family Research Council. And of course, Brad, you've known Tony for years. I have as well.
Yes.
And just a great supporter of Point of View. And I love what he said. Yeah, there's a lot of places you can get information, but get the right information.
Exactly.
Very good.
Exactly. There's another way to look at Point of View and look at the ministry impact. We're a megaphone for the Christian community nationwide. Earlier this year, our listeners generously gave to help some Christian refugees that left Iraq. And often these people just had the clothes on their back. And our audience just put an outpouring of gifts toward that cause.
Yes.
But we also, the guests, the variety of guests, we give a voice to so many people that would not have a voice except for Point of View. As you consider your gift of $360, $1 a day or more, please think about that we will give you guests and topics you'll get nowhere else. And that happens only because of the way we've designed 40 years ago for that very purpose. And so we invite you to call 1-800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. Every single dollar you give right now will be doubled like that. And that's awesome.
Dedicated to educating you, equipping you, and empowering you to make a difference. We're part of that megaphone. You've heard a chance to hear from Tony Perkins and even Alan West, and that kind of in the policy area. I thought for just a minute we might want to hear from Sean McDowell. You can actually watch this video as well online because we've posted that, but he's certainly been very big on speaking about worldview and apologetics. Here's what Sean McDowell had to say.
We clearly live in difficult times, especially for Christians. Sometimes it feels like the culture is just turning against us quickly. We need to speak up with compassion, but we need to speak up with truth in the way that Jesus did. That's one reason why I'm a big fan of Point of View, is they're dealing with cutting-edge, controversial subjects that the church sometimes doesn't want to deal with. But they do their homework, they do it informed, they also do it in a way that's practical so we understand the issues but know what we can do about them. I've been a guest many times on Point of View and been a friend of Kerby's for a long time. And the reason I keep coming back and would love to come back whenever they invite me is because Kerby just asks great questions. It's clear that he understands the issues, it's clear that he's informed, but he's also thought about the issues biblically, but wants to help people understand what can they actually do about it. Ministries like Point of View can only survive with the help of listeners. And I know you've got a lot of great ministries to consider giving to. One of the reasons I think Point of View is so valuable is because they just deal with the cutting issues of the day in a manner that's informed, in a manner that's gracious, and in a manner that's making a difference. I often hear as I travel around the country from people, they've listened to a show, they've been following on the website, so it's evident to me that Point of View is making a difference. So if you want to make a difference, especially today in our culture that's becoming increasingly hostile in some ways to the Christian faith, Point of View is standing up for truth, and they need your help.
Sean McDowell talking about the importance of supporting Point of View. We have a $5,000 match challenge.
We do.
Brad,
now,
what does that mean?
You may have gotten a busy signal a little while ago, and just call back. We now have 4 lines reopened for you again. We get you on and off the phone in a couple of minutes. Again, you don't have to have the money in hand now. This is a pledge for the future. Will you stand with Point of View as a financial partner? That's the question of the hour, and we ask you to call us 1-800-347-5151. Hey, the hour's about done. We really need to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. Let's not give up. We had some victories yesterday in the polls, but we're not out of the battle in any way, shape, or form.
Well, again, this is why we encourage you right now to take that opportunity to join with us. You can even continue listening to the program and just go to the website, pointofview.net, join the team. But we do have operators standing by. For a minute, it was all crowded, and so sometimes people call and get a busy signal and say, oh, well,
but never
I'll try
on the
later.
web do you get a busy signal.
No, so you can do it either way now. And again, that $5,000 match challenge, very important. And just before we get back to that, let me mention that the theme this week has been Founding Fathers, Floundering Politicians. I have so enjoyed some of the things that Bob Allen has put together.
Yes.
Let's hear some of the other comments he has about the Founding Fathers.
Is it even possible to form a lasting human government? In Federalist Number 1, the essays written to support passage of the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton wrote that this experiment in liberty would, quote, decide the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. The founders knew the history of mankind, a long train of wars, poverty, and oppression, often inflicted upon people by their own rulers. America's birth itself was set in motion as a reaction against the abuses of their own king, King George of Great Britain. Their Declaration of Independence explicitly recognized there are laws that transcend human laws. They called them the laws of nature and nature's God. And they went on to say in those memorable words,
"We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness."
America's founders said we have unalienable rights, rights no man can take away because they come from God Himself. So what happens when the state becomes hostile to the idea of God? Pretty simple, the men in power become gods. In a very real sense, the future of liberty in America and the world is dependent on God's people sharing the gospel and studying the biblical wisdom God gave us, enabling our spiritual freedom to blossom in civil freedom as well. For Point of View, I'm Bob Allen.
Gotta love Bob Allen. Boy, I just love it so much because Bob Allen is really, first of all, it's nice to meet someone else who's read the Federalist Papers.
Yes.
I was required to do that at Georgetown. But why are we doing this, Brad? Is because we believe that the foundations of this country are cracking. And if you go back to the founding fathers, you understand that they understood the nature of government, the nature of human beings. They were informed by biblical perspectives, James Madison in particular, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, the three authors of the Federalist Papers. And so again, we recognize that sometimes you have to go back to the owner's manual. You have to go back to the basics. And that's exactly why we're spending some time today talking about founding fathers in juxtaposed to floundering politicians sometimes.
That's right.
We really encourage you to give, but also there are other listeners that have also said it's time for you to support Point of View.
At my church, I'm the public affairs representative. I obtain information about political affairs that are going on. I just wanted to say thank you for your programs. I listen to you every day, and you're really my inspiration to do what I do at my church. I feel capable, mostly from what I learned from your programs.
We're equipping people and empowering people to do and make a difference.
It's crunch time. All the lines just opened up. We have a clear slate for you. You'll get in and out in a couple of minutes by calling 1-800-347-5151. $5,000 match challenge on the table. Every dollar you give up to $5,000 will be doubled. 800-347-5151. We need to release that total into our grand total immediately, that $5,000. It's sitting outside of our total.
Yes.
And it doesn't go in unless it's matched.
Don't want to leave that money on the table.
No, we don't. 800-347-5151. And
as Brad said, we're a megaphone, and you're helping us broadcast.
That's
so
right.
your involvement helps us to continue doing that. Again, as we go to a break, this is a great time to call 800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. We need to hear from you, and we'll be back right after this.
Pointofview.net.
History is changed when God's people step up and proclaim His truth. As Gary Bauer, president of American Values, said yesterday,
if we look at our own history as men and women of faith, the people we look up to and admire and want our children to know about are the Christians in every culture, in every period of history, who stood in the public square and spoke the truth. And I believe at a time like this, that's exactly what all of us are called to do here in the United States.
Point of View will continue to speak up, equipping you to speak up, but we need you to join the team with a generous donation that will be doubled through our match fund. Again, your $50 gift has a $100 impact. Your $30 a month Truth Team membership means a $720 boost over the coming year. Give what you can. Call 1-800-347-5151. Give online, pointofview.net, or use our Point of View Radio mobile app, 1-800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Thank you so much. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Third day of the Truth Team 360, and we have an opportunity for you to join with us. And you might just say, why are we doing what we do? Well, in many ways, we're convinced that our culture and our country are not moving towards biblical values. Brad Fisk with us. And Brad, that's one of the reasons we've talked about even trying to do what we can do to make a difference, because my argument has always been you change one heart, one mind at a time.
That's right.
And certainly we are privileged to speak to more than 1 million people every week. It's about almost 1.5 million. But the reality is we would love to go much beyond that to see if God would expand our borders. We have a very large megaphone, but we need a larger one because our culture is moving in the wrong direction, and we certainly want to do what we can to turn this country around.
Now's the time not to sit back and give up, thinking that we scored some victories in different places and yesterday. Now is the time to do just the opposite, is to take the advantage and go. Take the momentum and go. And that happens one phone call at a time. We are listener supported, Kerby, and we come to you a couple times a year like this, just simply saying, will you help us? Will you help us financially make a difference in the culture? You can be a part of that. That is a huge thing to do, to step in and help us, and we really appreciate that. In fact, I got to say thank you to some folks real quick. First of all, the phone number, 1-800-347-5151. Opportunity with a capital O right now, because all but one, no, 2 lines are booked. We've got 5 more. 5 lines at 800-347-5151. Thanks to Charlotte checking in with a generous gift, and Charles from Texas checking in. South Carolina, we're hearing from Gary there. Thank you for that gift. And Carl checking in from Fairbanks, Alaska.
I might just mention, some of you might have just tuned in, and if that's the case, we have a $5,000 match challenge on the table. Did I not say that? I'm sorry. I got so excited. I thought we would just mention that. So if you've been waiting and say, well, I'd like to give, and of course, again, if you are just joining the program, maybe it's part of our team, and to become part of that team, it's as simple as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. But since we have that match challenge, that $360 becomes an additional $720.
That's right.
Yes. And so again, if you're not familiar, we've also said that if indeed you wanted maybe just to sponsor a minute a month, that's $65. But again, that $780 is doubled. And I've seen some of the individuals, I know one came in last night saying, well, I probably could give $100 a month.
That's right.
That's $1,200. Well, that becomes $2,400.
Exactly.
And that chews up that match challenge pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It does. Now, we only have $2,265 to go.
Yes.
That's it. $2,265 to be matched, sitting outside our total right now. The only way you can release it, that we can release it, is for you to give, because every dollar you give, from $5 to $50 to $500 to $5,000, well, of course, the $5,000 would be up and over, is to give us a call and make that pledge of support. 1-800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. 5151.
You might say again, why do we do what we do? Well, again, we are talking about the need for us to really begin to educate individuals, to empower them, and to equip you. We had a chance just a few minutes ago to hear from Annette, who says she works with the church there and really educates individuals, and so we're equipping you in that regard. And we recognize a lot of you are activists. You're not just listeners, but doers. I would find out, Brad, that when we have our take action items on on the website, or when we talk about those, they're the ones that click on the buttons, make the phone calls. These are the activists. And so we're encouraging some of you that have been very diligent in calling your legislator or in sending an email to a member of Congress. We're asking you right now to go to the website or go to your phone and join with us as part of our team. You're already sort of our team anyway. If indeed just the people that were sending emails or making phone calls to Congress began to be part of our Truth Team 360, you and I would just be sitting here.
We would be fully funded. We'd be fully funded, ready to expand the walls of the program into new places. And I love when we hear from our listeners right now.
Yes. Of what Point of View does and why she appreciates it.
Well, I've got to talk fast because I've got so many things I appreciate you for. One is when we're going to hear about the debates, and I hear all these people talking about debates, and I say, wait a minute, I'm going to listen, and Point of View will talk about it, and then I'll know the truth about the debates. So then I'm able to speak more wisely, and I appreciate the action items that you put on so that we know where and how to do those action items, because I don't always know exactly how to go about it, but you've got it well posted. I appreciate the commentaries each of you write on your website. I appreciate things that you put on the website that we can repost onto our Facebook. I appreciate Friday when you're all around the round table and we get to hear a whole lot of you. You know, what we're doing about religious persecution or whatever's going on Fridays. I like to hear all of you talking at once. I like the different authors that you put on. You know, I like knowing why they wrote it, how they wrote it, their backstory, sort of. And so it's books that I would never even know about. I had them on. I appreciate the apologetics program so that I know how to defend my faith. I appreciate that I met Kerby in Augusta, Georgia, and I appreciate that you come out and meet your listeners.
That's quite a list, don't you think?
That's awesome. I tell you, do you think she might be a fan?
I think so. But, there are others that could say that as well. I get a chance that when I travel around, she mentioned at the end, I try to go to some of the places where we broadcast, and I meet these people face to face, and they tell me all sorts of stories. And I sometimes wish I had a tape recorder to play some of those later on. Right. But one of the things we're encouraging you to do is certainly to give. But let me hear from Charlie for just a minute, because he also says it's about time for us to spread the word about Point of View.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you. And my challenge to the people that are listening today, put Point of View's station address and time on bulletin boards, Christian bookstores, any way they can get the rest of the country to see, not just primarily, born-again Christians, but other people would have a great interest in listening to your program. So please make that challenge to the people listening, and actually give us more ideas, too, on how to promote the program as well as this specific topic.
Just a few listeners that really appreciate what we do and recognize, as we said, there are a lot of distinctives to Point of View, and there's a long list that we can probably talk about. We've talked about being a megaphone. We've talked about the fact that you're not just listeners but doers, talking about reaching 1.5 million people. We certainly have talked about the fact that we give voice to some of those authors.
That's right.
And, of course, we've even helped raise money for other ministries. We mentioned in the first hour here raising money, which was sent directly. 100% of what you gave to that particular fund went to those refugees. And so those are all things that we're doing to try to advance the ministry here at Point of View and to help other individuals have a platform so that they can educate America and we can turn this country around.
I guess it boils down to the question, do you care about this country? Do you care about the future of where we're going to go? That's why we bring up the Founding Fathers, to let you see what it should have looked like back then and what it might be looking like now or may look like in the future. 1-800-347-5151. We have all the lines open right now. 1-800-347-5151. We still have $2,265 remaining in a match challenge. As you give a gift of any amount up to that $2,200, it will be matched dollar for dollar. Simple. This is not rocket science, Kerby. We also invite you to go to pointofview.net and click on Join the Team. That's another way to give. 1-800-347-5151.
Visit that website, pointofview.net. You can see some of the welcome gifts. You can find out the various ways, and you can be on there just as you listen to our interviews, which we'll have right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
The editorial drumbeat against guns continues while the evidence mounts that gun deaths are decreasing. 2 articles from last week illustrated these contradictory claims. The editorial board of the New York Times attacked what it called the fantasy that carrying a concealed weapon makes you safer. Meanwhile, Pew Research reported that the nation's overall gun death rate has declined 30% since 1993. The New York Times editorial cited statistics from the Violence Policy Center that since 2007, at least 763 people have been killed in 579 shootings that did not involve self-defense. There's some real problems with these statistics and the analysis. First, these numbers lump suicides with other deaths. Suicide should be considered separately because they have nothing to do with carrying a concealed weapon outside the home. John Lott has actually shown in his research that the suicide rate among concealed carry holders is lower than the general population. Second, the study had to cover a period of 7 years just to get the numbers high enough to sound scary. Remember that there are 12 million Americans that currently have concealed handgun permits. Given that large number of concealed carry holders, 7-year period might have accidentally killed an innocent person while trying to bring down a perpetrator. Noted that an increased spotlight on guns does not reflect the overall gun violence trend in the country. Although most Americans think the number of gun crimes has risen, the U.S. gun homicide rate has actually stabilized somewhat in recent years. Actually, the nation's overall gun death rate has declined by 30%, and that percentage includes homicides, suicides, police shootings, and accidental shooting deaths. Sadly, many gun statistics used in editorials are being abused and misused. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores. Point of View, Truth Team 360, Tom Fitton.
Oh yeah, I think Point of View is a good investment for those Americans concerned about getting the information that Judicial Watch brings about its anti-corruption and government watchdog work, and the information that Point of View brings about the activities of other conservatives, and again, bringing an alternative view to the media. That's what Point of View does.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Truth Team 360, an opportunity for you to join with us, and we have a $5,000 match on the table. And if you would like to help us out, that certainly is the case. Brad Fisk with us in studio, and we certainly encourage your phone calls even as we are doing this interview. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. Or if, as you're listening to this, you're near a computer, you can simply go to pointofview.net, click on Join Our Team. Right. And we are looking forward to this interview with Dr. Albert Mohler. His new book is We Cannot Be Silent, Speaking Truth to a Culture Redefining Sex, Marriage, and the Very Meaning of Right and Wrong. He is president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, also as professor of Christian theology there, holds a Master of Divinity as well as a Doctor of Philosophy in Systematic and Historical Theology from Southern Seminary. Has also pursued additional research in a number of places, including the University of Oxford. Dr. Mohler, always great to have you on the program with us.
Kerby, it's always a privilege. Thank you so much.
I might just mention that I so enjoyed the book that I did a commentary on it already, which will air next week. I'm going to cover it in my Sunday school class this Sunday because you really help us understand how we went from everybody believing in marriage to same-sex marriage, how we went from people believing in fidelity and chastity to the sexual revolution. And so it's a masterful work, and I appreciate you taking the time to write the book and join us today here on Point of View.
Well, thank you. That's very kindly said. And the book was a real burden, I felt, to get the story out so that Christians in particular would know the story and know how that should help us to think these issues through.
You know, one of the things we talked about in the first hour with Robert Knight is that we just saw a vote in Houston, and the people in Houston voted overwhelmingly to turn down some of these, some people called it the bathroom bill or the anti-discrimination bill. So I am somewhat encouraged that getting information out, as we're talking about here on Point of View, educating, empowering, and equipping individuals will make a real difference in our community, and I know that's why you wrote the book.
Well, absolutely. And by the way, yesterday was a good day in terms of elections across the country because it showed that common, ordinary Americans just aren't accepting the dictates being handed down by the elites. And the sexual revolutionaries did not win the day in Houston yesterday. For that, we should be very thankful.
For sure. A couple of quick things. One, as you talk about this idea of the sexual revolution, and I love the title of one of your chapters, and that is, it didn't start with same-sex revolution. It really did not start with same-sex marriage. It really started with something like birth control, contraception, and then eventually led to the redefinition of marriage. And I think it's important for people to realize that this so-called sexual revolution and the drive towards the homosexual agenda has been in place for many decades. It didn't just happen overnight.
No, absolutely. You know, I think most Christians are really surprised to think that the sexual revolution as we know it now had its roots back in the early decades of the 20th century. If you go back to that time, not one denomination, not one Christian church affirmed the morality of artificial birth control. And then the Church of England became the very first church to shift that. But it was still pretty hypothetical. It took the pill coming in the early 1960s, which was, as you well know, ideologically driven. That was a funded effort by sexual revolutionaries because they understood what many Christians did not, and that is if you separate sex and procreation, you can facilitate an entire moral revolution. And right after the pill came modern feminism, and came also the sexual revolution on America's college and university campuses. Fast on the heels of that came no-fault divorce, the redefinition of marriage from being an eternal covenant, that is a lasting covenant for this lifetime, and turned into a mere contract. And all that set the stage for the sexual revolution coming to same-sex relationships and to same-sex marriage.
I might just mention we have a link to your website in the local bookstore, but we have a place for people to order it if they would like. And let's talk about this gay rights strategy. You quote from an individual that I quote from in my book, A Biblical Point of View on Homosexuality, and you go into it in some detail. Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, in their book After the Ball, they recognized that they had to redefine how people perceived homosexuality, make homosexuals victims, make anybody that would disagree with them the oppressors, and it was a way in which to normalize homosexuality and marginalize Christians, don't you think?
Yeah, you know, Kerby, it's so interesting you mentioned that book. It's very expensive now, out of print for years. I found it in a bookstore as soon as it came out in Atlanta, Georgia in 1989, and I read it, and my first thought was, this is going to work. It was a horrifyingly successful strategy, and just in what you're saying, you know, in other words, vilify Christians, do their very best to present this as a civil rights movement. And you know, in that book, there are things we almost can't even discuss in terms of how detailed it was about how the goal was to minimize any references to sex and make it an issue of rights. And once again, they were just stunningly successful.
I've read in front of audiences sometimes the sex major points, and at the end I said, how successful were they? And everybody goes, yeah, very successful. And some of the others, of course, are even getting foundations to endorse them, as well as getting funds, talking about sex, homosexuality all the time, working with gay journalists and all that. And so we've seen how that has played itself out. but I do believe that it gets back to the title of your book. We cannot be silent. It seems to me that we as Christians should speak out. And I'd love to get your thoughts for just a minute, because we're in the midst of raising funds, and we believe that this can be a real platform to take individuals who hear this. And as Brad and I were just saying a minute ago, we don't just have listeners, we have activists.
That's
we
right.
have people that are doers.
Yep.
What would you say to even listeners right now listening to Point of View and are maybe a little bit encouraged by some of the votes that took place? We can look at Kentucky, the governor's race. We can look at the Houston race. They can look at the elections taking place next year. What about their support of Point of View?
Well, going back to longer than I might want to remember, I've been listening to Point of View, and I'm just this. The title of my book is "We Cannot Be Silent." That's exactly what the sexual revolutionaries and those who are pushing this moral revolution want to happen. They want us to go away and be quiet. And it's because the kind of sustained moral argument, apologetics, defense of biblical truth that you're doing in this program, that makes an incredible difference, because when Christians know the truth, they do tend to act on it. That's just called faithfulness. And so I hope and pray this ministry is only strengthened and grounded and funded.
Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, I was about ready to ask you, and you just answered it. This is Brad Fisk here, and Dr. Mohler. I'm telling you, I'm hearing this interview, and I'm thinking every Christian family needs to have your book right now. I mean, this is so current event. This is so right now, so I guess I would ask you: could you give our listeners just one of the reasons why they ought to pick up the phone, give us a call of support at 800-347-5151?
Well, it's because we need to keep making sure that Christians know the truth, and they're not going to know it when Governor-elect Bevin accepted the election. He, by the way, is a dear friend to me and to the school. And what a great victory for Kentucky. You're right. That's why I wrote this book. Excellent. Last night, it's interesting you mentioned the Kentucky election. Last night, I was in the room when Governor-elect Bevin accepted the election. He, by the way, is a dear friend to me and to the school. And what a great victory for Kentucky. But it was interesting. I had a father come up to me and say that his 10-year-old son had picked up my book sitting on his dad's desk, and the father said, that prompted me to have a conversation I needed to have with my 10-year-old son right then, right there. And that just made me so happy, because that is why I wrote the book. I didn't write the book to 10-year-olds, but there's a real sense in which I wrote it for 10-year-olds, because I'm looking at the generation coming, and that's why your ministry is so important too, because I think in many ways the most important people you're talking to are parents, giving them the ammunition they need to raise their children. And to young adults and to college students, high school students, they desperately need intellectual ammunition for the defense of the faith.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, though, I want to talk about maybe Chapter 5, the transgender revolution. I'll warn everybody, because we're going to get into something a little more difficult. And Chapter 8 in particular, religious liberty and the rights of Christian, because one of the reasons I mentioned that is, of course, you have Kim Davis and others, and this newly elected governor in Kentucky.
That's right. Picked up the rest of the remaining total. And so here's what we're going to do for the balance of this hour. If you would like to partake in a new match, if you'd like to call...
very different. But, Brad, just before we take a break, we have a match, don't we?
We do, and it got met. We had one caller call in and picked up the rest of the remaining total. And so here's what we're going to do for the balance of this hour. If you would like to partake in a new match, if you'd like to call with $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 that we can turn around and put on the air for a match challenge, give us a call. Our phone operators, highly trained volunteers, HTVs, are ready to take your call at 1-800-347-5151. Or maybe you want a match for tomorrow or for Friday. That's fine. Give us a call. Say, hey, I want to get in this match thing. This sounds like a lot of fun. Give us a call. Let us know that. 1-800-347-5151. We rejoice as that $5,000 goes into the total. Yes.
Very good. We'll take a break, and we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Al Mohler, but don't forget that number, 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
The week is quickly passing us by. If you have called to join our team, please know how grateful we are for the encouragement and the support. Thank you for stepping up and making this work possible. If you have not called, if you have not given, please consider again what this ministry means to you and in a very real sense to the nation. As Gary Bauer said Tuesday,
you guys do just an incredible job of providing people information and calls to action that, quite frankly, they don't get many other places. Because without point of view and just a few other similar types of outlets, you will have no source of information that you can trust as being true and accurate and consistent with your biblical-based values.
And remember, every dollar you give, whether as a one-time gift or monthly, every dollar is being doubled thanks to our match fund. Don't delay any longer. Call 1-800-347-5151 or online at pointofview.net. 1-800-347-5151 and pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, if you'd like to join us, we would encourage you to do so. You can join the Truth Team 360 in a very simple way. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or go to pointofview.net. And Brad, even though we met the challenge, we are still looking for other people to help us reach our goals so that we can continue doing what we're doing.
This is kind of fun. We're asking you if you might be led of the Lord to do this. Give 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, whatever, as other people have done to make these match challenges. Please give us a call, even right now, and say, hey, I'd like to give, but I want to do it through the match challenge process. Maybe it would run that tomorrow or Friday, whenever. But 1-800-347-5151. Just inform our operators that's what you want to do. 800-347-5151. You do need to call us if you want to do that. Don't do that on the website. You need to contact us directly so we can set up the way you want to handle it. Again, the phone number, 1-800-347-5151. Match. We still need your support.
We do.
We really, really do. So please keep those phones going.
We'll continue our conversation with Dr. Albert Mohler. And again, he is the author of many books, but the one we're talking about, The Moment We Cannot Be Silent, Speaking Truth to a Culture Redefining Sex, Marriage, and the Very Meaning of Right and Wrong. It is published by Thomas Nelson. Look for it in your local bookstore. About 200 pages, but also, of course, we have a link for it as well. Dr. Mohler, we were told, and I think a lot of Christians naively bought into the idea that if we just give the other side same-sex marriage, that'll be it. And then as soon as that happened, because of 5 Supreme Court justices, we heard about polygamy, we've heard about polyamory, we've heard about transgenderism, one whole chapter in your book. This is, the other side isn't saying, oh, okay, we'll be fine with same-sex marriage. They're moving on and trying to redefine marriage and family in every possible way. True?
Well, absolutely. And, this is a moral revolution that didn't start with same-sex marriage, and it certainly isn't going to end there. We've got lots of others lined up to get their place. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, the logic of the LGBT movement, that T is so important because it's a far more comprehensive revolution when you get to the T than even the LGBT. Yeah. And that's what many Christians have not yet realized.
Let's talk about that for just a minute, because again, some people say, well, okay, I saw Bruce Jenner's, who's now Caitlyn, but that's just, that's sort of a blip. That's an outlier, but it really isn't, is it?
Well, just a matter of the last 24 to 48 hours, the Obama administration has informed a suburban Chicago school district that it must allow a 14-year-old biological male to have unrestricted access to the girls' locker room in a high school.
That's nuts.
That's not a hypothetical issue anymore. And that's what any previous generation of human beings would have called insane and morally wrong. But the moral revolutionaries are saying that that's a moral mandate. That's just how comprehensive
surgery. And you quote someone that I mentioned recently, Paul McHugh, who's a former psychiatrist in chief at Johns Hopkins University. So one of those elite. And some of those individuals used to think that, well, if we can change, I'll be delicate, the plumbing on the exterior, that will deal with the psychological problems interior. And what they're finding is that isn't doing any good at all. As a matter of fact, it may be doing more harm than good. And yet we're, quote, today as a culture, actually lauding people that are willing to change the biological notions and the whole, if you will, fixtures that God has established on male and female in the first place.
Yeah, Kerby, we just have to speak sensitively but honestly about this, because if we don't talk honestly, we're never going to get to the truth. There actually is no way to make a man into a woman or a woman into a man. It just can't be done. The genetic structure, the molecular structure, the skeletal structure, the reproductive structure, none of that is fundamentally transferable or transformable. And so what Paul McHugh said is that basically his word was mutilation. That's what's happening in this surgery. And then the other side of it, and you mentioned this, the other side of it is, it turns out that after surgery, people are not more happy by and large than they were even before. And that's even as heartbreaking as anything I can imagine. But not only do we have the moral revolutionary saying this new and it's right. They're saying it is a right. So Governor Jerry Brown is saying that the prison system in California is not only going to have to recognize this, but taxpayers are going to have to pay for it. That just is another indication there's no end to this revolution.
Yes. Brad, I was just watching you shake your head if nothing else. If you had said this to people 30 years ago, there is nobody that would believe that this would actually be unfolding right before our very eyes in 2015.
Absolutely not. And I've not read the book yet, and I'm looking forward to, but I got to believe what the base problem that's going on here is a move away from biblical standards and biblical values. Because really, I know you believe this, Dr. Mohler, at the end of the day, it's change and nothing else will. I mean, it just shows how lost our culture is right now.
Well, absolutely, because it's clear that this culture is impervious to argument. It's impervious to evidence. It's impervious to wisdom from millennia of human existence. But praise be to God, it's not impervious to the gospel.
Amen.
Because the gospel is more powerful than any worldly wisdom. Yep. And of course, Christ said to his church, "Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world," and that makes all the difference.
Well, again, we are trying to be a megaphone to answer some of the questions and give information to educate and to equip and to empower individuals. But I certainly wanted to cover one other chapter, and that's chapter 8 in your book, Religious Liberty and the Right of the Christian, or the right to be a Christian. And I think that's powerful because so often here, Dr. Mohler, on Friday, we have Penna Dexter, we have Kelly do some kind of religious liberty issues. Good. And you know how those have just multiplied. A couple of years ago, when we talked about doing a religious liberty segment every Friday, at the time I said to Kelly, I said, well, I hope we have enough to cover it every Friday. Now we could do it every single day.
Exactly.
And even though that chapter's only got a few pages, I know you could have written an entire book, Dr. Mohler, just on the religious liberty threats to Christians.
Well, absolutely. And look how they're growing. And, it's very interesting. We were just talking about Tuesday's election in Houston. Let's remember that the mayor of Houston had the audacity to try to subpoena the sermons of Christian pastors in Houston over the legal controversy over this ordinance. It was one of the most atrocious violations of religious liberty in our lifetimes, and she almost got away with it. And so we're looking at plumbers and cake bakers and photographers, and just consider the fact that the fire chief of Atlanta was fired for holding just to what Christians have believed for 2,000 years.
Yes, and again, when you realize that you think of institutions that were so well respected, like the Boy Scouts and how they were attacked. You think of various companies like Hobby Lobby that so many people enjoy and how they're attacked. You recognize that if they can go after those institutions, they can certainly go after just about anybody else in our culture. So, Dr. Mohler, I appreciate you writing this book, and as I said before, I've already done a commentary which will air next week on it. As I read through the book, I just said, this is too good to keep to myself. I'd like to do a fuller interview with you on a future program, but also I'm going to be talking about it in my own Sunday school class this Sunday because we think this is something we need to know, because we cannot be silent and we need to know how to respond biblically. So we need to give truth, and we need to give it in loving ways, but at the same time, speaking the truth in love is something you've been very good at, and you certainly help us do that in this book, and I appreciate you joining us today here on Point of View.
Well, thank you so much, Kerby and Brad, and know how much I appreciate your voice, and I'd look forward to that continued conversation. God bless you.
Thank you.
Let me encourage all of you to visit our website, pointofview.net. You will see that we have a link to Dr. Al Mohler. It's albertmohler.com. You can, of course, see some of his commentaries. We've been pretty good about posting them from time to time. So, again, that's another place that you can find it. This book, over 200 pages, and it is published by Thomas Nelson, and I would really do recommend the book to you. But we still have an opportunity for people to participate.
Well, let me just use the book title. We cannot be silent. Point of View listeners, I'm talking to you. We cannot be silent on the telephones right now. This is such a critical time to give, and to give generously. Join the Truth Team, $360 a year or more. Here's the phone number, 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can always go online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Click on Join the Team.
Here's what Jane had to say.
That we know what's going on, and you folks do a great job of it. And I also had joined. It's the best thing to do. Like somebody said, they do $1 a day, and they don't feel that so much. At the end of the month, they've got $30 to send right off. And it's up to us citizens to pay attention and do what we can, and to pray and to help you out as much as we can.
So again, pray and join for $1 a day. That's all we're asking for, right?
That's
$1
right.
a day.
And a quick reminder, if you want to give a larger gift and have it be a match challenge, let us know that when you call. But in the meantime, call, support. Let's fill every line during this break. 1-800-347-5151.
And visit the website, pointofview.net. That's another place that you can give and find out more about the interview that we just did. You can listen to it again. And most importantly, you can join Truth Team 360, pointofview.net. Click on that button that says Join Our Team. We'll be right back.
Point of View, Truth Team 360. Brent Bozell.
Just try to imagine for a moment a world where you didn't have talk radio. Someone once asked me, what would it be like? How important is the Washington Times? My answer was, imagine Washington, D.C. without the Washington Times. When I look at the left and promote a leftist ideology, I then look at talk radio and say that the talk radio is the single greatest force to neutralize the propaganda of the news media. And Point of View was a real trailblazer in this whole talk radio phenomena. So, how important is it on a scale of 1 to 10? A 10.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
You know, Brad, I do travel around, and sometimes I'm in communities where they don't have point of view. Maybe they don't even have any kind of talk radio,
right.
and I'll talk about things, and they'll look at me like I'm from another planet. They're like, what are you talking about? They don't even hear about some of these issues that we're talking about. So again, you right now are listening to this program, and you are benefiting from even the conversations we've had today with Robert Knight and Al Mohler and some of the guests that we've had in the past and others that we have later this week. And so if nothing else, that's a reason for you to give us a call and to actually participate and become a member of Truth Team 360.
Let me make a comment about the website for a minute, but first I'll give the phone number, 1-800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Let me encourage you, listener, if you've not gone to pointofview.net recently, you need to go over there. It is packed, Kerby, with resources coming out your ears. I mean, really, you have done, your team has done a masterful job of just loading up that website with so much great information. And so if you can't get the radio show, you can always listen to us online or through the app. That's one way to get to us. But you can also go to pointofview.net and pick up all kinds of information there. There's even videos to watch. There's audio portions that you can listen to.
Yes, well, again, you can do the search engine. All my commentaries are on there. And if you hear me using some facts and figures, some statistics, and say, okay, I need to find those. As a matter of fact, someone just today called in and wanted some information to talk to some of the members of his church about. And so we pointed him to a couple of commentaries and a couple other articles. So again, we're here to educate you, equip you, and empower you to make a difference.
But let me make the obvious clear. It costs money to do that.
Of course.
It didn't happen for free. And that's where you come in, my friend. Partner with us if you would. This is Truth Team 360 the entire week, and we're asking you to check in at that $360 level. There's a couple of great bags to choose from, a canvas tote bag, a sport bag. You get your choice. And at $65 a month, that's basically underwriting a minute of the broadcast.
Right.
You could have both bags.
Yes.
And at the $100 level, that's a Century Club, and you'll join and receive a beautiful travel bag and the other two bags if you like. Those are yours as a welcome gift joining the Truth Team. And we do a lot of things for the Truth Team year-round.
Well, we certainly do. And I might just mention, first of all, everybody gets a copy of this. I'll hold it up. And it's our Declaration and Constitution, and that's a free
gift resource
to everybody. Doesn't matter what you give, you will receive one of those. And then, of course, we send out the Outlook magazine to you as well, so you have that. And then, of course, those of you that join through the Truth Team 360, there's some other benefits. Membership has its privileges.
It does,
and we do
indeed.
send other materials to you. And if you have never don't get all the benefits that we are providing to you, because that's our way of saying thank you.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's the phone number. I'm going to look through the window and watch our phone operators. 3 lines open, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151, looking for caller number 1, caller number 2, caller number 3. Would you call right now during this segment? And we're going to hear from a friend of the ministry with some really good words to say right now.
Let's hear from Becky.
I'd really first like to say I appreciate Point of View. You've been great and wonderful. A lot of information, and I really appreciate all your work you do.
We'll come back and hear some other callers, but don't forget, we've been in the midst of Founding Fathers, and let's, if we can, hear from our good friend Bob Allen, educating us on some very important issues. In particular, is it possible to form a lasting human government?
Is it even possible to form a lasting human government? In Federalist Number 1, the essays written to support passage of the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton wrote that this experiment in liberty would, quote, decide the important question, whether capable or not, of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. The founders knew the history of mankind, a long train of wars, poverty, and oppression, often inflicted upon people by their own rulers. America's birth itself was set in motion as a reaction against the abuses of their own king, King George of Great Britain. Their Declaration of Independence explicitly recognized there are laws that transcend human laws. They called them the laws of nature and nature's God. And they went on to say in those memorable words,
"We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
America's founders said we have unalienable rights, rights no man can take away because they come from God Himself. So what happens when the state becomes hostile to the idea of God? Pretty simple, the men in power become gods. In a very real sense, the future of liberty in America and the world is dependent on God's people sharing the gospel and studying the biblical wisdom God gave us, enabling our spiritual freedom to blossom in civil freedom as well. For Point of View, I'm Bob Allen with a point to ponder.
Great point to ponder, and again, just some great illustration of what our founding fathers were like. We need to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. This is what David had to say.
I'm 25 years old, and I started listening to Point of View about 4 years ago, and it has changed the way that I think and the way that I view the world around me.
That's, again, what we're trying to do.
It is.
Change the way you think and to adopt and develop a biblical worldview.
I've got a very important question for you, my friend. Our culture and our country are not moving toward biblical values. Would you agree?
We would agree.
But in fact, we're moving toward a culture of selfishness and of sin. Point of View, as Kerby's been saying today a lot, educates, equips, and empowers you and the Christian community to stay in the fight and persevere. We do this every single day, my friends. Think of the story of Moses, his hands needing to be lifted up to continue the battle and get to victory. We are at that point where we need you to lift our hands. Lift them up so that we will have victory and stay on the air, get bigger and stronger than we've ever been before. That, my friend, is what you're giving to when you call 1-800-347-5151. I guess I'll ask the question, why would you not give?
Yeah.
Why would you not step in and at some level of support and say, I am going to stand with you because I believe in what you're doing? 1-800-347-5151.
We've even talked about how you will hear things you will hear nowhere else. Just think about the last 2 hours if you've been listening to us with first Robert Knight and then Dr. Al Mohler. So again, want to encourage you to join with us. You can go to the website, pointofview.net, click on that button that says join our team. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about individuals maybe helping us with a match. Is that
That's
still
right.
a possibility?
That is. If you want to set up a match, give us a call when we're off the air. We'll talk to you offline and set that up. If you've got a few $1,000s that you'd like to take our way and see it doubled, either tomorrow or Friday, give us a call and let us know that. But again, you can go to pointofview.net. We are never closed there. You can go there any time of the day or night. It's open 24/7, 365. The phone number, though, to call right now, 1-800-347-5151.
So again, just encourage you to do this. And even though we're going off the air, you can still visit the website, pointofview.net, and join our team. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about economics with Jerry Tuma. We're going to be talking with Congressman Louis Gohmert.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And some more.
Awesome.
And of course, then, so again, even though we're going off the air, you can join us and visit the website, pointofview.net. I want to thank Andrew, Catherine, and Chris. Brad, thank you for your help, and we will see you back here tomorrow.
History is changed when God's people step up and proclaim His truth. As Gary Bauer, president of American Values, said yesterday,
if we look at our own history as men and women of faith, the people we look up to and admire and want our children to know about are the Christians in every culture, in every period of history, who stood in the public square and spoke the truth. And I believe at a time like this, that's exactly what all of us are called to do here in the United States.
Point of View will continue to speak up, equipping you to speak up, but we need you to join the team with a generous donation that will be doubled through our match fund. Again, your $50 gift has a $100 impact. Your $30 a month Truth Team membership means a $720 boost over the coming year. Give what you can. Call 1-800-347-5151. Give online, pointofview.net, or use our Point of View radio mobile app, 1-800-347-5151, and pointofview.net. Thank you so much. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.